So, what happened to Prisma? When someone goes missing, the most important thing an investigator can do is figure out their movements before they vanished. Did they meet with someone who had a grudge against them? Were they behaving strangely? Were they seen heading somewhere they wouldn't usually go? More often than not, if these questions can be answered, then the missing people can be found. 92% of missing persons are found every year. But what happens to the people who stay gone? Today, we're looking at the case of a woman who vanished into thin air. Even though she had plenty of contact with people she knew and was spotted in different locations several times the day she went missing. Almost 2 years later, Prisma Reyes has never been found and no one knows what happened to her or where she could be. Prisma Denise Peratella Reyes was 26 years old and lived in Dallas, Texas, with her 6-year-old son, who she was totally devoted to. According to her stepdad, Dan Fuchs, Prisma put herself through college when she was pregnant to give herself and her son a better life. Prisma was born in Veracruz, Mexico, and was raised by her mom and grandmother after her dad died in a car accident. When her mom married her stepdad when she was a kid, they moved to Texas, and Prisma became an official U.S. citizen shortly before she went missing. At the time of her disappearance, Prisma was working as a paralegal and had a second job at a car dealership. As well as that, she served in the National Guard. She worked long hours, so enlisted the help of a family friend and hired her as a babysitter for her son. On the morning of April 17, 2019, she dropped her son off at the babysitter's home and headed to work at the car dealership. Prisma usually came to pick her son up at 7:30 p.m., but when she didn't show up and didn't get in contact to say she'd be late, her babysitter got worried. At 9:30 p.m., when Prisma still hadn't shown up or answered her phone, the police were called. That morning, Prisma headed to work at the car dealership, and there were no reports that she was acting strangely or seemed distracted in any way. At around midday, Prisma left the site to meet an ex-boyfriend, Ryan, for lunch. According to her mom and sister, Prisma was trying to rekindle the relationship. Not everyone was in favor of this idea, since their relationship had been pretty toxic when they were together. The two met at the E-Bar Tex-Mex restaurant on the North Haskell Avenue, where they ate and had a few drinks. While they were there, the pair allegedly got into an argument and Ryan left the restaurant, but Prisma stayed there for 3 hours and kept drinking. Eventually, the bartender cut her off and told her to leave the restaurant after she started to cause a verbal disturbance. She drove away from the restaurant in her white 2017 Jeep Wrangler, back towards White Rock Lake, where her job was located. However, halfway through the drive, she did a U-turn and started driving towards the Olympus at Ross apartment building, where Ryan lives. According to Prisma's manager, she never returned to work that day after leaving for her extended lunch break. During her journey, Prisma got into a road rage accident with another car and actually pulled on the 3 passengers in the other vehicle. Luckily, no one was hurt, but Prisma had left the scene by the time the police arrived. At some point after she left the restaurant, Prisma called the babysitter and they reportedly talked for about an hour, which is said to be unusual. If she needed to call the babysitter during the day, their conversation would only last about 10 minutes. It's not fully known what they talked about during the call, as the babysitter doesn't like talking to the media and the police haven't released this information if they have it. All that's been said is that they discussed Prisma's job and she confirmed she'd pick up her son at the normal time of 7:30 p.m. She was next seen parking outside the apartment building and was caught on CCTV running into the parking garage, where she started packing back and forth outside the elevator while making several phone calls. Strangely, police said that there seems to be nothing odd about Prisma's behavior caught on camera, but many have commented that she appears drunk as she sways when she stands and keeps stumbling into the walls. She made 9 short phone calls between 5:49 p.m. and 6:01 p.m., 5 of which were to her ex and another to a friend out of state. According to the friend, Prisma said she was in the elevator and needed help because she didn't feel right, but her friend didn't know how to help her. A resident of the apartment building claims they saw Prisma nearby the elevator, as seen on CCTV, and she was crying. As she walked out of sight from the camera, she was never seen again. Prisma's babysitter called 911 after waiting an extra 2 hours for her to come and pick up her son and reported her missing. Her car was discovered the next day, abandoned outside the apartment complex on Roseland Avenue. It was parked at an intersection, as if she only intended to stop there for a short time. But strangely, no one had called to have the car towed, even though it was in a place that would have disrupted traffic. So, what happened to Prisma? The investigation was led by the Mesquite Police Department, who commented that this is a really frustrating case due to the lack of leads. According to Lieutenant Stephen Briggs, hundreds of people have been interviewed about this case, but they haven't even come close to making an arrest or figuring out what happened to Prisma. When searching the apartment complex where she was last seen, it was discovered that a few of the exits do not have security cameras, and it's possible she could have left through one of those exits. Where she went after that is unknown. As you can imagine, there are a lot of unanswered questions in this case that have left Prisma's family and the police completely confused. Prisma's family have made a point to tell the police and media that her behavior on that day was extremely out of character. She isn't the kind of person to go drinking during the day, and she definitely isn't the kind of mother that would abandon her child. Her mother, Lilia, told the media that she last spoke to her daughter either on that day or the Wednesday prior to warn her of the storms that were expected to hit Texas in the coming days. Her stepdad, Dan, was working out of state when Prisma disappeared, and unfortunately had to find out the news through family so he could travel back to Texas. Even though he isn't her biological father, Dan has been in Prisma's life since she was very young and considers her and her siblings to be his children. He's worked hard with the police and media to keep attention on Prisma's case in the hope that one day she'll be found. Prisma's son is currently living with his grandparents. A month after Prisma vanished, her son's father, Arturo, filed for emergency custody of his son, but was denied. This was considered a weird thing to do on his part. According to the family, Arturo has very little to do with Prisma or her son since he found out she was pregnant and ended their relationship. Prior to this, he never showed an interest in seeing his son and never paid child support. Now, he's trying to build a bond with his son and trying to get along with Prisma's parents, as well as cooperating with the investigation. Police investigated Arturo, but as with Ryan, he had a solid alibi. Even though the family have chosen to keep the details of his mother's disappearance from him until he's older, Dan has said that his grandson is intelligent and knows that something has happened to his mom and doesn't understand the situation. They continue to try to keep his life as normal as possible. So what are the theories surrounding Prisma's disappearance? Her family fears that foul play was involved here. Given the state Prisma was in after her lunch date, it wouldn't have been difficult for someone to force her into a vehicle and away from the scene. The Interstate 345 highway is just a 10-minute walk away from the complex. If she'd been walking by it, then it's totally possible that someone picked her up. They believe that she is still alive and being held somewhere against her will, possibly into forceful, illegal labor. Online sleuths tend to believe that her ex Ryan had something to do with it. After their argument at lunch and her turning up at his apartment, their fight may have escalated and ended badly for Prisma. However, police have confirmed he has a solid alibi, so this isn't likely. Another theory is that she left the apartment building, wandered off, and got hurt out of sight. The area the apartment building is located in is very busy, and even though there are a few parks, there aren't any rivers or forests that she would have stumbled into. There's one thing that everyone in this case agrees on, and that is that she would never willingly leave her son without a mom. With very few leads or clues into what happened to Prisma on that terrible day, all anyone can do is hope for a miracle breakthrough in this case. It's just crazy to me that it's been almost 2 years since this poor lady vanished, and there is literally nothing to point investigators in the right direction. I'll definitely be keeping my eye on this case. What do you guys think happened to Prisma? This is a really confusing case, and I can't wait to see what you think down in the comments.